All right, I think we're live. Just a little overview of what's going on tonight. We're just going to be kind of discussing kind of a roundtable discussion type of deal going on. Nothing really super formal or anything. If you guys have any questions about what's going on with COVID-19, feel free to ask. I and the other person I've invited up, Kanya, aren't by no means like experts or doctors, but we'd be happy to try to answer your questions. And then to what Jocelyn said, are we going to die? I would say no. Hey, Kanya.
Hey.
I would probably say no. We're not going to. I don't think. I think that if we keep things like social distancing and whatnot under control, we'll be fine in due time. We just kind of have to wait it out and let this just run its course. But no, I think the end of the world. Knock on wood, but it's not the end of the world. Kanye, do you have any insights on that or anything?
No, but I recently just heard about Uber, and I don't know about you, but sometimes my parents are outside working and they're not home, and I have school events to go to, even though school is closed. So what about the people who depend on Uber to get to places like work or grocery stores? If Uber shuts down completely, then transportation is going to be an issue for those people.
True. I mean, I think most businesses are taking down a bit and whatnot. And so I don't know if that's as much of an issue. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a concern for people who need to get around, who don't have consistent travel. So if they have to get to, a grocery store, like you said, or somewhere to get supplies or something, then yeah, it's definitely a concern, especially if they shut down completely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we can kind of just jump right into these questions here. So
Yep.
First question from Liz: any updates since yesterday? From what I've heard, all I've seen in terms of besides just new cases and the virus continuing to grow, I saw Congress is now passing legislation to I'm trying to remember here. It's something like free COVID-19 tests, and then benefits for people that are going to be unemployed or laid off as a result of COVID-19 spreading. So, Connie, have you heard anything?
All I've really heard is just the Dow and the stock market just plummeting completely by a lot because people are looking out about just not investing and pulling out their cash. Actually, if you look at the gold prices, you can see that because when the whole coronavirus thing initially started, the price spiked up all the way to 1,600 and something. And that tells you that people are basically, or they were, investing in gold and trading in their cash for gold. But now you see that it dropped down to 1,500-ish. And that means that they cashed out for whatever reason, probably just to, get cash in the banks and make sure you can online shop.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the economic situation is definitely a concern, especially the Federal Reserve you can see they're scrambling for some sort of response to this. They've dropped interest rates to 0% effectively, and now they're starting a really aggressive quantitative easing program to try to stimulate markets. But really, I mean, it's dropped something in the realm of 10,000 points over the last, concerning the Dow. It's dropped, I think, a good 10,000 points or so in the last couple days. And Liz, to get on the screen, I have to invite you up here. So me and Kanye are the ones kind of hosting and stuff, but you're willing, you're perfectly able to ask a question and whatnot. But yeah, I think the Fed is really you can just see in the news, they're scrambling like crazy to fix this. So yeah.
Yeah. It seems like it's going to be something that lasts for longer than a month or 2 months. I feel like it might even continue over into the summer because currently China and then Italy and then Iran are the ones who are dealing with the most issues with the virus. So if it keeps spreading, despite the quarantines, we're still going to have to deal with the aftermath. How do you know for sure that the virus isn't going to, spread after the quarantine ends? So those issues are still something that we need to resolve.
Yeah, I definitely agree in that result. We're this isn't, despite what people have said, this isn't just your average flu. This is definitely something to be concerned about and something to really be doing something about in terms of staying home, not going out. I know a lot of doctors and people like the WHO are using the phrase flattening the curve, because what's happening is everyone's getting it and they're flooding the medical system. And so by staying home, we're essentially flattening that curve and keeping the actual medical system in check, allowing people who have really critical cases to actually get their treatment. That's the word. And then just from Jed, how much percent drop for Dow spells really, really bad news? I mean, that's kind of a subjective question, in my opinion. I think it's not necessarily just the percentage drop. We've seen the consistent multiple 1,000-point drops. So it's not just that we saw the market kind of dip and go back up. It's that we're just seeing it go down and down and down. And with other economic issues going on, such as already limited trade from China, and we're going to see some unemployment rises because of layoffs. It's just an economically bad situation that really isn't going to be resolved in the very, very near future.
The positive side to that, though, is definitely that the economy is cyclical. So when it rises, it'll eventually fall, and then when it falls, it has to go up again at some point. So yes, economically, we're all going to struggle, but eventually it'll go up. It's just a matter of when, and I feel like that time period is going to be long. So we might be hit by a depression, perhaps. Who knows? Hopefully not. But the main thing is the quarantine right now is to help keep the virus from spreading, because the more you interact with people, the more of an issue it will be, especially if they're talking about the coronavirus being airborne. So if it is airborne, that's an issue. If people are going out to like Disney World, which is currently closed, or like if you're traveling constantly, you're in contact with several people.
Yeah, I definitely think, like what you're saying, the cyclical nature of the economy. I think definitely this virus is what might put us some sort of recessionary period. I don't know if I'd go as far to say a depression, but definitely have some sort of recessionary effect in terms of spurring unemployment, lowering prices. I think also just the negative supply shocks that we might see from decreased manufacturing already being an issue, along with now trade being not necessarily cut off, but other issues might rise prices slightly. It's really the inflationary or deflationary effects of this are something that people are going to want to watch. Sorry, I'm just trying to read what Harrison said. Was trading and lying on the inflation stock market. Time is a temporary cut aside. Yeah, I suppose. I think also with the stock market, there definitely might have been some sort of overvaluation. I mean, it had been rising for upwards of 8 or so years since the 2008 recession, and so I think, and economists have been saying we're kind of due for a recession to some extent. So, yeah.
Another controversial issue is actually religious gatherings. I just saw that. I was reading the news a couple hours ago and I was like, wait, what? Like, how can you shut down a church or a mosque? I don't know if you can pass legislation to do that, but that is like where a lot of people go and just do their thing. And if you do close it down, that's fine, but like I don't know how that would work legally, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know if it's really possible to pass true legislation because of the First Amendment and whatnot. I think like Perla just said, it is kind of a decision of the church or temple or mosque or synagogue or whatever it is. And I think ultimately in my opinion, most organized religious gathering places are going to end up being shut down for the safety of the people practicing. They might have, I think like online seminaries and whatnot are going to become a pretty important thing. But yeah, they might be online religious meetings and whatnot. All right, let's see. Perla asks, is the school year likely to expand into the summer? Are we eliminating the break entirely, or are we just going to slide into the next year? Huh. Connor, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I don't know about people who don't live in New York, but Governor Cuomo, he issued the temporary ban of the 180 school year thing. So basically, like, I don't know how this would work for the breaks, but if our quarantine does go past, like, let's say April 1st, and you're, like, stuck at home to, like, June, and you only have June for school, you don't have to make up those days that you were at home. I'm not sure about summer school, but if they're not making you make it up, then probably no summer school, and you're just going to have to study from home. That's how it is now for New York.
Yeah, I know. I live in New Jersey, so Governor Murphy, issued a law or some sort of like executive order. I don't really know how it works on a gubernatorial level, but regardless, he released something that basically made it so that New Jersey schools can now make up their days in online school days. And so we, at least in terms of my schools and other New Jersey public schools, won't have to make up time in July or June. Well, actually, we have school in June, but in terms of July and August, because of that, it's probably more on a district or state level thing in terms of they're not, your school will have to extend, or how long the actual quarantine period or closing period is going to actually last, especially because this is on such a state by state basis. So yeah. Jocelyn, what if school is not online? Are you referring to like if we go back to real school, or if school just shuts down completely, like you just don't go to school? Because if you're saying just don't go to school, I would figure you're just using there's no talk about online schooling. Then I'd figure they might be using things like spring break days, maybe. That'd be my best guess. Kind of, do you have any ideas?
Yeah, it looks, I don't know, because they can't force the students, even if you do have internet at home, they can't like force you to show up to like the Zoom meetings or whatever for your classes. So I've figured that if they don't do online classes, I think your teachers would expect you to do some sort of preparation for your AP exams, especially if they're online, like Corage Board has hinted at, which, fingers crossed, we do not want AP exams for math online, because stats and calc FRQs online would be a disaster.
No, I can't do that. Yeah, no, I had a calc today. I'm doing online schooling, and I had a calc test today, and I literally had to go to my teacher and say, "Can I print this out? I need to do this on paper." And in terms of what Jocelyn's saying about AP tests in Perla, the College Board is kind of working things. So obviously, we're not correspondence with the College Board and things. So this is as far as information that we've heard from news outlets and other social media. From what I've heard, and Connie, you might have heard different, they're planning some form of online AP exams if possible. And I believe what I've seen is the proposed solution so far, they sent out surveys about this, was a 45-minute exam that is made up of only either multiple choice or free response, which I don't know how, I don't like it. Connie, do you have any thoughts about that 45-minute idea?
It's weird because the AP exam, I know it's like a time constraint, but it's just for the first time we're having to deal with the virus, and then trying to make an AP exam online, there's obviously going to be issues. Like, technology comes with a price. Like, it's not going to work for everyone. So what are they going to do for the kids who can't get on, or if there's a malfunction with the system, like what are you going to do? Are you going to fail the AP exam because you couldn't take it online? Like, that's one of the main issues I could think of.
Yeah, I definitely think also just 45 minutes, in my opinion, if anyone in the chat has any other opinions on 45 minutes, in my opinion, is just not enough to test someone's skills for a class of this magnitude. Not that I want a 5-hour long exam, but 45 minutes just is like, if you think about that in context of an exam, that's one AP flying essay, not even a DBQ for AP histories. So when you think about it in terms of like the type of the exam, the type of exam and what it makes up, it isn't enough to actually test skills necessary for the college class, which A, might impact if you get credit, and B, might impact things like, Brandon's saying also it's high stakes. Probably 5 minutes per topic. It's 45 minutes in my opinion, and if you guys might share or disagree, it's just not enough time. As much as I love the idea of a short AP exam, there's not enough content covered on the exams, just in my opinion.
Absolutely. So, yeah. And I see that Jocelyn just asked older residents. I don't think age necessarily is the issue. I think it's your health. Like, if you have immunodeficiency issues, you're probably more susceptible to the coronavirus as opposed to, like, I don't know, somebody our age. Like, teenagers, I think, would survive. Even if you got the coronavirus, I think that teenagers would make it out because our systems have developed more as opposed to like an infant or like a 70-year-old dude who is struggling and sick.
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, age probably does play a role because typically just, just in terms of like correlation, higher ages tend to come with more issues. But I wouldn't call age the end all be all. It is true that the older you are, like, I don't want to say that age doesn't matter, because it does, in terms of if you're a 70-year-old, you're definitely more at risk than a 6-year-old. For example, a 16-year-old with asthma and immunodeficiency is probably at a worse position than a 70-year-old who, works out every day, eats healthy, and is a healthy person. So while age plays a role, it's not the end all be all.
Right.
And
So there's
Perla,
other factors.
and then Perla asks, is it true that this isn't going to go away, that it's going to be like the flu? That's something I can't really answer. I don't think anyone really could answer that at this point. I would like to say it's going to go away, but I mean, like any disease, I think the only disease that I can think of, and I don't know if we have a history teacher in the chat, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the only disease that we've truly eradicated is smallpox. And even then, we still have samples. Heck, there's still 1 or 2 cases of the bubonic plague, or the bubonic plague or Black Death, but bubonic plague in the United States every year. So I wouldn't say this is going to go completely away, but I do think that this is going to, in due time, it's going to get to a point where it's not, we all have to stay inside and quarantine ourselves.
It's just creepy to think about. Like, we would all be stuck at home if this lasts for more time. Like, if it lasts for a couple more months and they do, like, the curfew that's going on. I think my friend who lives in London, he was like, there's a curfew 8 p.m. and you can't go out after that. That would suck. And then that's also weird because you don't get to see anyone if you think about it. Your whole day is either school, job, go home, and that's it. So that's like, you can't go see your family or friends, and it's just social isolation, which, yes, is supposed to help, but also, like, mentally you go a little bit crazy. Like, there's nobody to talk to physically.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, outside of the issues that's happening, obviously, with COVID-19, I think mental health is actually something that's going to be really a focus of this for people who aren't necessarily at a high risk of getting ill. Because I can see, even in myself and in some of my friends, I mean, we're having trouble just acclimating, like, to a more sedentary life, in terms of like having to go to school at home, having to work from home, having to, like for me, I went for a walk. It was really the time I truly left the house in a good 3 or 4 days, not of my own free will, just because, frankly, there's, what is there to do besides walk around? And, there's some people, posting free workouts online. I mean, the one thing I really hope is that I saw this on TikTok earlier, I really hope we come out of this kind of with a bunch of new skills and stuff. Because, I mean, we have 3 weeks of what is essentially for some free time. So,
honestly, yeah.
we come out and, I've been thinking about like taking up hobbies or learning a certain skill, or I think that's something that's going to kind of come through our generation with coronavirus and whatnot.
Hopefully. I mean, I can't relate in any way. Yesterday, I wasted my whole day away basically in front of the TV watching Netflix movies, so I can't even relate.
I feel that, yeah. I definitely have, everyone's going to have those days. I've had those days. I say I'm going to learn a skill or something, and then I realize I've spent the last, 20 hours on TikTok. So, yeah. Yeah, moving on to the next question. Jocelyn asks, are we going to experience essentially what is another Great Depression? I don't want to say yes to that, because if I were to say we're going to see the next Great Depression, it's fear-mongering, if anything. I think what we're going to see, and Kanye, I'm sure you have a differing opinion, is a recessionary effect. I think we're going to see unemployment jump, and we'll have to wait until, I think, 2 weeks from Friday. Yes, 2 weeks from Friday, the Bureau of Labor Statistics is going to drop the new unemployment rate, new job gains of the month, stuff like that. And that's really going to, I think, start the economic impact of COVID-19 in the United States, since it's actually quite different from something like the Great Depression, in that the Great Depression was brought on by there's some similarities in terms of like stock market crashes and whatnot, but I think really this is different in that we're not just seeing one crash lead to, a bunch of economic impacts. We're seeing the entire economy basically just slowly shut down, right? I mean, businesses are starting or stopping, and factories are probably closing, and with that comes a complete, not just a decrease in things like, short-term GDP and whatnot, but a long-term impact on economic growth. That'll take years.
I can agree with that. I think I see what you're saying, and it makes sense. I just think that if the coronavirus issue lasts for longer than a year, which hopefully it won't, we'll find a solution to it. But if it does, then long term economically, like you said, it's going to be hard for some people who are like unemployed or having issues financially to just recover from everything that's going on. And also, the banks said that they would stay open, but if everybody's put on like a curfew as it is, then it's just weird because you have to think about it. Like the grocery store suppliers and like the people who work at banks are the ones who are in contact with the most people. So, like, if you keep the banks open, then you're more likely exposed to a bunch of different people and germs and whatever. But I'm not at all advocating for shutting down the banks because that would be weird and you would not have access to money.
No, yeah, that'd be an issue. So yeah, I think the economic impacts are something that we really, I think in my opinion, it's actually going to probably define the next couple of years of economic policy, similarly to how we saw in 2008. If you look at actually the data, the recession in 2008 only lasted 9 or 10 months or so, which is actually quite long for a recession. But you saw the impacts of that going through into 2009 and 2010 after the housing market crashed. You see Lehman Brothers closing, you see foreclosures happening. And really, it wasn't until 2017, 2018. Well, actually, no, you saw recovery through the rest of the 2000s and 2010s. But, you really didn't see true super prosperity being noticed until really the late 2000s into the 2010s. So, yeah. All right. Liz asks, what is the time?
Go ahead.
Sorry? Oh, no, I was just reading
go
the next
ahead.
question. What's that? Okay.
Nothing. I was just.
Liz asked, what is the time frame until the quarantine ends? I don't know. It's really my whole answer. I don't know. I think that's like these types of questions, while they're valuable questions, I don't know if they're answerable right now because, it really does depend on how effective social distancing is and how effective people are at actually distancing themselves. The people who are staying home and keeping themselves isolated are probably, helping. Whereas people who are saying, oh, this is just the flu, and going out and going about their business and whatnot are actually probably hurting things due to the fact that this isn't the flu. And I feel like I can't stress that enough. While the symptoms are definitely flu-like, this isn't the flu. It's something that might work the flu. And when I say the flu, I don't mean like the 1918 flu. I mean just like the flu, like your average fall flu. So, yeah, we're going to go with the CDC on this one. I mean, people are saying 8 weeks. Some people hypothesize that going into the summer, viruses don't do great in heat. So who knows? I would say this is all going to be over and done, in my opinion. I'm not a doctor. I'm not the CDC. I'm guessing the initial crisis will end around the summer. But as Eric said, we really won't see this kind of end until a vaccine comes out, which, according to the CDC and WHO, could be upwards of 18 months. Or actually, the lower bound, I think they said, was 18 months. So, yeah.
I think something that we should consider is how well the media is handling this, because thank God it's not the McCarthy era where everybody goes crazy about communism. Like, there's no panic, there's no hysteria. People are scared, but like, it helps that, the news channels and all the online stuff is under control. At least, like, nobody's purposely trying to get people to panic. So an important thing is to stay calm and just think rationally and not emotionally.
I actually probably disagree with that in terms of, I think the media is, I think the media is definitely over exaggerating to an extent. in terms of not just maybe to get clicks or whatnot, but I think that the media simply is just making things worse by consistently and constantly saying, oh my God, 100,000 people have it, 120,000 people have it, 140,000 people have it, and really only reporting on what's the bad news. Which, I mean, yeah, there isn't really much good news in this situation, but
yeah,
when you say there's really no panic, I'd have to disagree with that in terms of, I mean, you see people going out and buying up entire shelves of hand sanitizer and toilet paper. Ironically enough, I've seen canned food on the shelves, which is weird. But yeah, I mean, I think the panic is actually what might hurt us in the long run because of the fact that I think most people would agree this isn't the end of the world.
Yeah. I just meant
Incoherence
that
from the executive branch. Sorry?
I just meant that at least like we're not at the point where like we're accusing each other, or like at least yes, there have been some racist comments against Asian people, but again, like we're not going crazy and being suspicious. Yes, we're rushing to like the grocery stores and everything, but at least we're not turning on each other because if we did that, then that would just be more disastrous than the situation already is. And I definitely agree that the coronavirus is all over the news and they're not saying anything like positives. Like some channels are just blatantly trying to get more views and more clicks by making like, I don't know, catchy headlines. So that part I don't agree with. There's just ridiculous stuff on social media. Like, it's Corona time. Like, I really don't think it's appropriate to joke about that because it's just sad. Like, so many people are dying.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think this is an interesting Tanya. Would you recommend having a home garden to avoid frequently having to buy groceries? That's an interesting question, actually. I never really thought of that. I'd say if you have the supplies to start a home garden, I mean, go for it. I don't think the biggest concern right now is, going to the grocery store to buy food. I think it's more important that you eat than if you, run the risk of getting another person in terms of, if you don't eat, you're going to be hurt regardless. So while I think that, starting a home garden could help in terms of if you want some extra food or if you just want to be able to kind of be more subsistent, sure. Kind of, do you have any ideas on that? It's definitely a really interesting question.
I mean, I think it depends on where you live because, like, in New York right now, it's kind of cold out. It's like 50 degrees, but the soil is hard as a rock. Like, I tried to just dig out a weed and I was like, I'm done. After the first one, I was like, no, because it took me forever. And so I think it depends on where you live. Like, if it's warm, go for it. And like you said, if you have the tools, also go for it. But I'm not really sure how gardening works. It's not my expertise, but hey, YouTube's a resource.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a garden, I mean, it's a fun hobby. I mean, I keep a little garden during the spring in my backyard, and I enjoy it, grow some vegetables and whatnot. But I think, yeah, it probably won't help you completely, be honestly, having to buy groceries whatsoever. But I mean, yeah, it'll just probably help you have more food, in your house and your pantry and whatnot. Definitely, definitely something to think about.
Yep.
Let's see. Trying to go through these questions, kind of pick out some interesting ones. Tanya asks, do you think that we'll move past this, or is e-learning, our future? I think this is going to end. I think by September, we'll hopefully be back in school. I don't want to say definitely, since I'm not, an epidemiologist. But I think by August, we'll kind of have cleared this out fully, and we'll be able to go back to school. But I do think that with the power of the internet, online learning is definitely having some issues. I think we're going to have to work through it in terms of if, in the event that this doesn't fix itself. So, yeah.
Somebody asked about hand sanitizer. I think the point of that is basically just to make sure that your hands stay temporarily clean until you have time to wash them. So, I mean, if you have a sink and hand soap around, I think you should definitely wash your hands rather than use hand sanitizer because washing your hands basically just gets rid of all the feces and bacteria that may be on your hands. So if you think about it, the people who don't wash their hands, that's just you're already setting yourself up for coronavirus if you're around people.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what people misinterpret with hand sanitizer is that all hand sanitizer is made equally. If you're trying to kill something like a virus, which this is, uh, yeah, like Harrison's saying, hand sanitizer is antibacterial. If you're looking for a hand sanitizer that's going to have an impact on the coronavirus, you'd want to use something that has, I believe it's a 60% alcohol, 60% alcohol or higher. But yeah, really what you need to be using is soap and water and washing your hands consistently. And that's really, as cliche or as kind of simple as it sounds, that really is what's going to get us out of this. Social distancing, washing your hands, the simple things that really you do when you have the flu. Like I said, just not going to work when you're sick, or washing your hands, things like that people really don't think about. That's going to have a really big impact on this.
Definitely. Also, it's interesting to consider like the people who work from home aren't as affected by the coronavirus, but the people who do have to commute to like the city or like any other places where there's a huge density of people, the shift to just working online is insane. Like if you look at people who haven't grown up with, like Apple and Microsoft and things like that, they don't know how to use like Google Docs and like things like that. And it's interesting because now the employers need to give them training sessions on how to use like Google Drive and all the applications to work from home. That's only for the people who have an opportunity to work from home. People who are at like Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts and things like that, some of them got laid off because there's nobody really coming in except for the drive-through. You don't need that many people for one drive-through. So
Yeah, definitely. I think that the job market, see a really big impact as a result of this. I know, even just as my own personal example, my dad works in New York City, and his whole job said, really, if you don't have to come into the office, don't. And he's been working from home the past couple of days. So I think if in things more white collar jobs and stuff like that, like that works in marketing, it's definitely something where if they can send you home, have you home, they're going to have to. But for things that where you're working in things like a Dunkin' Donuts, like you said, or other, I think really the stereotypical example that I always think of is in food service or something where really you can't do that from home. A lot of companies are going to have to come up with solutions to either A, lay off workers, B, send workers home for the time being and pay them. And I know, I think the bill passed by Congress, I don't know if it was passed yet, but it was, I think, proposed by Congress, is now to make it illegal for any companies under 500 employees to not pay workers, and B, provide $1,000 a month for some Americans. I know that's really been on the table in the last couple of months. And then Perla asks about people who work and live in archaic jobs. I like that word. So like printing presses. This is really, it brings up an idea in economics called structural unemployment. So that's really where you have obsolete skills that causes your unemployment. So like you said, people who are printing presses, the one I always think of is like a typewriter repairman. These jobs, while they're already dying out, I think that, yeah, we might see a higher rates of structural unemployment as we go through and see people really not going to those more archaic jobs.
I think that the just print journalism in general will eventually die off on its own because everybody's transitioning to, like social media as a way to broadcast news or just put out any type of articles. And even like online, you Google one thing and you get like the news at your fingertips on a phone. So eventually, yes, I do think that like readership from paper stuff is going to decline and printing jobs will probably die off, but I don't know when or if that'll actually happen in this year.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree in terms of the impact it's going to have and whatnot. And that really, in terms of what Jocelyn's asking, saying that COVID-19 effects are never going to go away. I don't think they're ever going to necessarily go away, but I think they're going to become effects that aren't going to impact us on a daily basis. So, for example, we're not going to eventually, like I keep saying, in due time, we're going to be able to go back to school again. We're going to be able to go back to work again. Right, and like Harrison was saying, it's become more like H1N1, where that was 2009, I think 2009, 2010, where it kind of ran its course. And I actually really haven't done much research on the pandemic itself, but yeah.
It's interesting to think about as well. If you look at Africa and Latin America, they don't have as many cases, if at all. I don't think I saw any. I don't think there are any cases over there right now, which is interesting. They're kind of just like isolated. So basically, I guess their geography is saving them because it's warmer there. So I guess it's better for the bacteria that gets killed there.
Yeah, it definitely is not. I just pulled up a New York Times article that I'll drop. It looks like it really hasn't hit the continent very hard, but they're bracing for impact, and really social distancing is not starting there, which is interesting. Here, I just dropped the article into the chat, so if anyone wants to take a look at it, yeah, it definitely looks interesting. So let's see. Japesh asks, do you think AP tests will actually be online because of this? I think we have two options here. Online AP exams for people who need it, or cancel AP exams and call it a wash. I honestly think there is no good solution for this. And I have to give the College Board as much credit as possible that, as much as I dislike their policy, they are keeping the interests of students in check. It's more important that you stay home and stay healthy than, a number from 1 to 5. Kind of, do you have any insights on in terms of the new situation?
So I've heard that College Board has actually said that they're going to put out free online lessons, and I think for all AP classes eventually, if this doesn't die down. So having access to the content without a teacher, I guess it would be helpful, but again, just not having a teacher in front of you, you can't ask somebody for help. And with courses like chem and physics and calc, that's just difficult. I know right now, I have to teach myself 3 chapters alone for physics, and in the span of 3 weeks, and I'm going to try and cram a 4th one in, because I feel like here they might extend how much time off we have. So it's just tough for students and even for teachers who have to now figure out how to use Zoom or Google Hangouts to hold a class.
Yeah, definitely. The education impacts are going to be really substantial in terms of, in my own personal experience, none of my teachers, all but one of my teachers are just posting Google Classroom and just turned in by the end of the hour. And then another teacher is using Google Hangouts. But I think that kind of, what's going on is that teachers are really using a bunch of different mediums to teach their classes. And for teachers that aren't as technologically capable, I think that their classes are going to suffer. Not necessarily as a result of their incompetence, but just the simple fact is that online learning does not offer the same support, in my opinion, that in real life teaching opportunity where you can raise your hand and say, can you go over number 4? Or, why did you, going off a calc example, why did you multiply that integral by pi or something? But then, yeah, like Perla said, it's hard for teachers with kids who don't have internet. I've seen some schools in my own school giving laptops and stuff to kids who report that they don't have a computer at home. My own brother, he doesn't have a computer, and so he got one from our school. But yeah, I mean, for schools that don't do that, or for schools that have such a large percentage of people without access, it's a challenging situation and its inequities.
I don't know about the other states, but the Regents exams for New York, I don't know what's going to happen if we have school off until June, because do you reschedule the Regents exams for January or something, because they have Regents makeups, or you can retake them to get a better score. So I'm just curious how would that work? I don't know. Do you know?
No, I don't. Texas canceled its state standardized tests. I'm sure New Jersey will follow with. We use the park, so if anyone else lives in a state that's a park state, or no, we don't use the park anymore. We use what's called the NJSLA, but it's the same thing. They're all the same. And so for people who are taking it this year, I think it is going to be canceled. Luckily, I finally finished, so I'm not taking it this year. But for people who are, I think that is really in terms of standardized testing. Excuse me, I've been coughing up a storm. But yeah, EOCs, things like Texas standardized tests, Regents, as you mentioned. I think going international, I think Great Britain canceled the GCSE, I think it's called, stuff like that. And yeah, like Jocelyn said, the whole school year might be canceled at this point. I think, as much as it pains me to say that, I think we have to mentally prepare for that possibility.
Definitely. In fact, the students who are seniors this year are really just having it a rough year, basically, because if you're going to college in like August, you might be forced to take online classes, and that's gonna suck. Like, not only adjusting to college in your first semester online, but also not meeting your professor and not getting that full college experience. That's really gonna stink. And it's going to be hard for you to adjust because college is really just different from high school. I wouldn't know, but I saw my sister just going through so many applications and all of that. And I heard that Stony Brook even made their classes online. I can't even imagine what that feels like. Like, it's probably crazy for those students.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100. The education, I feel really bad for all the seniors. I have a couple friends who are really worried that their graduations are going to be canceled. They're not going to be able to walk. I feel incredibly bad for those people. And just, yeah, I mean, I really can't say anything other than I feel really, really sorry. I know, looking at Northeastern as an, kind of a case study, Northeastern canceled their graduation already. So now all their seniors are, I think there's now a petition floating around the university of students saying, don't do a virtual graduation, postpone it, or do something else. Let us walk and get our degrees. So yeah, it's definitely a controversial issue.
I think I saw that for the University of London, and they basically had to postpone their graduation. I think it was like a couple days before. Can you imagine just being so excited to graduate with that degree in your hand from college, and then they're like, it's canceled because of a virus? That really just stinks.
Yeah, no, it's definitely yeah, it's incredible what's happening. I mean, incredible in terms of the magnitude. It's just such a magnanimous type of event that it's weird to put in perspective because, growing up as teenagers, I mean, I know there are probably a pretty diverse age range here, but, catering to like the 16, 17-year-olds here, I mean, thinking about it, this is probably, in my opinion, one of the largest events we've experienced in our lifetime. I mean, in our kind of adulthood, per se, I think it is the largest. In terms of our lives, there's, I mean, a couple competitors and whatnot, but I can feel we're living history right now. Like, I'm waiting for, 10 years, 20 years down the line to open up a history textbook and see, the COVID-19 epidemic, 2020 to 2021 or something. I'm like, seeing that in history, it's going to freak me out. But seeing that in a history textbook, or, people keep joking their kids are going to come up to them and be like, can you tell me about the coronavirus epidemic, the pandemic, and stuff like that. I mean, it's interesting because, our teachers are always saying, like, you're living history. And I don't think that really ever set in, at least with me, until now, when I'm realizing, like, this, like, realized tweeting, I realized, like, this is a primary source, like so it's interesting.
Honestly, I wonder if, like, I don't know. I'm curious about the people who actually have the coronavirus, what their lives must be like. Obviously, they're sick and suffering, but like, societal pressure is probably a factor too. Like, just people scrutinizing you constantly for being sick. Like, it's not like you can control that other than washing your hands in isolation. Like, if you get it, you get it. Like, that must be a factor too, Just what will people think of you? And honestly, people get suspicious when it comes to a virus and just health things in general.
Yeah, 100%. I know paranoia is really spreading among people. They'll, have a sore throat one morning, or they'll cough a couple times, and they'll be like, oh my God, do I have it? Is what's going on? Like, and I think the paranoia is what's partially clogging up our health system. People who, are getting mild symptoms, things like coughs or runny noses or, simple cold symptoms that might honestly just be a common cold. But they're thinking, oh my God, is this the coronavirus? What's going on? So, yeah.
Absolutely. And the thing is that Governor Cuomo for New York, he said that we don't have enough beds in the hospitals. So, if people don't follow the social isolation part of staying safe from the coronavirus, we're going to face an issue like Italy is and have to decide, who's going to get the air masks and ventilators, and who's going to live and who's going to die. And that's a horrible decision to have to make. But honestly, are you going to give the mask to somebody who has a higher out of living or, like somebody who's probably going to die? So that's a rough decision, but Italy's going through it. It stinks.
It's an interesting, it's an interesting moral decision like that. And I know I read in the news, President Trump issued a, what was it? Like some sort of military like hospital boat now is outside New York. I mean, it's a crisis in New York. It's interesting that it all started on the East Coast and then you would expect it just blew up in New York, and now the East Coast is affected. And yeah, I mean, I think New York is actually being hit worst by this out of anyone.
Have you heard anything about traveling? Like, just if there are any bans on that yet?
A couple of days ago, I think it was over the weekend, President Trump banned any travel outside of Europe, or like to or from Europe. Yep, Europe and the UK. I'm sure that followed by some form of just travel ban, shutdown of the travel industry. Let me see. Japesh says, I think at this point, the government knows almost everyone is eventually going to get the virus, but now they're just trying to slow the curve. Yeah, there was an article I read, and it's really an interesting one that shows the impact that that social distancing has. 1 second, I'm just looking for it. It was a bunch of simulations of what it's like with social distancing. And so it's really interesting to look at it because you really do see the impact that social distancing has on the coronavirus. I'm trying to find it as we speak, so that's kind of why I probably sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. But it is an effective policy.
The travel agencies are going to be hurt the most, actually, if you think about it. That and small businesses at the end of this, just recovering financially is going to be tough. But also, like, the flights are going to be cheaper. And my history teacher cracked me up. He was like, do you know what I'm going to do at the end of the coronavirus after everything dies down? He goes, I'm going to go to China or I'm going to go to Europe because the fares are going to be so cheap. Why not? And I'm like, okay.
I mean, makes sense. See, I mean, even we're seeing like, I mean, honestly, it's funny because like the first thing I want to do when I get out of this is like shake someone's hand. Like, it's, I read a poem the other day that's something along the lines of like, may we no longer take for granted a handshake or just being able to go to school or, because I mean, this is the first time in our life that we've really ever had our education jeopardized. I mean, even with things like H1N, we were in, like elementary school even still. Yeah, I mean, we weren't thrown out of school, but this we're being thrown out of school. We're seeing basically the whole world shut down before our eyes. And it's scary. It really is. It's okay for it to be scary. It is. It's a fact of life.
It's creepy because there are also people who are not taking it seriously. Like I saw, it was a very weird article, but it was out there nonetheless. It was about the coronavirus being something that like some foreign nation started or like a group of nations ganged up on China or something. It was just a very weird conspiracy theory thing, and it was weird. It just, why would you accuse somebody of doing that? I don't know. Like, if you don't have evidence, why would you make that allegation against somebody? It's just not logical.
No, yeah. And though Pearl was saying, when they announced it at my school, all the kids in the class were cheering, and I was pretty frustrated. Yeah, it's interesting to see how our generation reacts because there really are two sides to this. There's the people genuinely concerned for the future of what's going on, and then there's the people kind of going like, yes, early spring break. And it's it's a weird like dichotomy that's forming between those two groups. And I can't really use the word exciting, but it's interesting to see how it's going to happen. So yeah.
I feel like us losing our education for a short period of time, or maybe long, who knows, but for this amount of time is definitely teaching us the value of school and our education and just learning and having people around, because social interaction is one thing that you miss out on when you're homeschooled or when you're FaceTiming somebody. You can't really like have that connection with somebody. Yes, you're here, I'm here, and so are like several other people, but you know, like you said, shaking somebody's hand, making actual eye contact with them, reading their body language is a huge part of just learning social cues and just, you know, how to interact with others. And that's something that you can't build online in terms of like just social awkwardness. Because if you spend your life or some time of your life online and then you're forced to like go into the workforce or school, you're gonna have to interact and you're just gonna be awkward now because you don't have those skills.
Yeah, no, the social impacts of this are going to be profound. Yeah, I mean, I can't really say anything other than that in terms of when we get out of this, you know, knowing it could be weeks, months, you know, it's going to be a really weird experience actually talking to people again. And so, I mean, I don't want to say we're going to be, you know, stuck inside until July, but I mean, there's the possibility that our social mobility will be limited until for the next couple, you know, weeks or months. And so it's the social impacts in terms of, you know, what happens now that you can't talk to people or you can't really see people. So it's, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm curious though about the elementary students and daycares. Like I'm pretty sure they had to shut down as well. But like again, the parents who have to go to work and their kids are at home, that's scary. Like, what are you gonna do if your kids are young and they can't stay at home? Now you're screwed because you gotta think my job or my kids. And also, like with the elementary schools, um, would they cut out recess probably? Because that's when like most of the kids are in contact. So eventually, as we go back to school and the coronavirus threat is temporarily lowered or neutralized for that time being, do you think they would do that? Like just get rid of like huge lunch cafeteria socialization things?
Oh, I actually hadn't thought of that. Yeah, I think maybe not like lunch, but things like recess, maybe. I mean, if they can, I think, yeah, I mean, canceling recess, doing things of that kind of, you know, that area might be beneficial to helping neutralize the threat. I don't think it'll be very popular among the students, but I mean, it goes as far as to, you know, argue like, I mean, when do you get to a point where you're just canceling everything? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it gets to a point where, yeah, if you're canceling every opportunity where students are together, you just have to cancel school. So it kind of brings up that idea of like, do we just kind of let students be together and go to school, or do we cancel school together? So yeah, from the elementary school perspective.
Yeah. I also feel like the people who work at the schools are also exposed to like the most bacteria, like the custodians who work there. Like last week, last week, they were basically coming into our classrooms and just wiping down like the desks and the doorknobs and high contact stuff and furniture. And it was just like I just thought of it at that point. I was like, well, who's gonna protect them? Like, yes, you wear gloves, but like eventually you're gonna come in contact with it. There's nothing that you can really do to protect the people who clean the most all day. So I feel like they're also exposed and at a higher risk than the students are on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, 100%. And even just before COVID-19 began to spread, you know, elementary school teachers and whatnot were at high risk because of the fact that, I mean, to be perfectly honest, elementary school students and like preschoolers and whatnot, they're disease vectors. You know, if a student gets a cold and now they come into school, and now not only are other kids going to get the cold, but the teacher's going to get the cold, and it's so easy for you to get a disease from like a toddler or a young child. I wonder how it's gonna. Yeah, I mean, what Japesh is saying, I think really, I was actually thinking about this earlier. I think a lot of schools, maybe not for the class of 2022, but for the class of 2021, where a lot of students aren't going to be able to take their SAT, I think a lot of schools are going to go test optional for the next wave of upcoming classes. And then things like internships and extracurriculars, I don't know. I mean, they're probably going to take it into account in terms of like if you didn't do as much in a club, in the first half of 2020, they're going to know, oh, because you were, inside quarantined. But I don't think it's an excuse, right? I don't think it's, under like the Common App, like explanation of, is there anything else you want to tell the admission board? Oh, well, I was stuck inside for 6 months. Everyone is going to be stuck inside for 6 months. So it's not going to, I think, have an inverse effect on you as a person, but just everyone as a student in their applications, comparatively to applications in years that haven't.
I see that Perla asked about board games or mentioned them. I think that they would still have to close that part off too, because again, cross-contamination. You touch the doorknob, somebody else touches it, you touch the games, some other kid already touched it, and that's just a way to get sick because kids usually like put their fingers on their face and their mouth, and that's just a quick way to get sick.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's like when you think about like kindergartners, you really don't realize how, I don't say dirty, but like how infectious they are in terms of, I mean, they don't understand what they're doing, and so it's like when they put their hands in their mouth or something, they don't know that now when they touch that little checker or something that could, Kanya.
Oh, what did I just do?
I think you turned off your video. You there?
It shows that I'm on screen. I don't know what happened.
You are. I think you are. There you go. You're back. You turned off your camera.
Okay.
Yeah,
that was an accident.
No, you're good. Yeah. Where was I? I think I think we're kind of coming up on the hour, so I think now starting to wrap up and whatnot. Talking about kind of the future. So, kind of have any like ideas of what the future is going to look like in the next couple of weeks, or?
I mean, I think it's going to be generally the same, and a lot of people are going to be sick, and I feel like we should just remain calm because panicking just leads to irrational decisions, and we don't need that. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I think also something that should be taken into account is while you're in quarantine, I'm kind of speaking to everyone here. While you're in quarantine, I think mental health is something you really want to keep in check in terms of not just making sure your homework's done and making sure that you are doing okay. You have to really make sure that you're doing okay, because something like this that's very socially isolating can be really detrimental to someone's mental health. And I mean, I'm even seeing it myself after 2 days of this type of thing. It's isolation. I mean, you get lonely, you get bored, you get frustrated easier. Notice that I really am becoming a different person as a result of this because of the fact that I'm being socially isolated. So for people that are more extroverted, this could be really detrimental to their mental health.
Absolutely.
So I think if no one has any more questions, I think we're good to start wrapping up and whatnot. So I think if you guys have any more questions, I know this is definitely not going to be the last coronavirus stream that we do. But yeah, I think for now we've kind of covered everything we covered. And yeah, so everyone, have a good night. We'll see you soon.